A great many things could happen in the space of 77 minutes. In 77 minutes, approximately 19,250 babies will be born, and 13,090 people will die. In 77 minutes, lightning will strike the Earth about 27,720 times. On July 18, 1984, in 77 minutes, 41 people were wounded or killed in the San Ysidro McDonald's massacre, the at the time deadliest mass shooting in American history, 21 of which were killed and 19 wounded by mass murderer James Huberty, and the 22nd being the perpetrator himself. Fair warning, this next part may upset some members of my audience, and if you need to step out, that is not an issue. Researching this story and comprehending this detail in all sincerity has left me in tears. His youngest fatal victim was an 8-month-old child whom, without a scintilla of empathy, remorse, or any sort of benevolence, he shot in the back at point-blank range, killing him instantly. The kind of heartless, godless depravity that an action like that would require is beyond my realm of what is fathomable. After waiting for hours by the phone for a callback from mental health services just 2 days prior, Huberty decided that society had had its chance. The day after the next, Huberty turned to his wife and said, "I want to kiss you goodbye." After asking where he was going, he responded that he was going hunting for humans. He was told he would receive a call back that same day, but his name was recorded incorrectly and he was marked as a non-crisis situation due to the calmness and obvious rationality in his voice. Situations which are addressed in approximately 48 hours usually, not the few hours that James was told. Before making the decision that would affect not only his life but 41 other people's lives, and all those who knew them, he sought mental health services, but because he was not able to receive that vital service, 21 people lost their lives. A similar tale is that of the Aurora, Colorado mass shooting. Loitering outside the theater only moments before he would kill 12 people and wound 70 more through a combination of tear gas, gunfire, and fleeing-related incidences, James Holmes contacted a mental health crisis hotline. He stated in later interviews that he hoped the FBI would stop him, or that he would be talked out of the action. The call did not go through, so Holmes continued on through the exit doors of Theater 16 at the midnight showing of The Dark Knight Rises. These men are not always monsters, not always twisted psychopaths driven by a twisted, insatiable desire for blood and completely unhindered by morality. Often they're nothing more than broken men whose situations have finally boiled over, and they turn to the sick drive that has consumed them. One final act of revenge on the society that they believe has abandoned them or tossed them out. I'd like to talk to you today about what drives a mass killer, their connection to the America's mental health crisis, mental health services, and what America must do in order to stop the senseless killings of husbands, wives, sons, and daughters at the hands of madmen who need help. We will be discussing today two of the three classifications of killers with multiple victims, mass and spree killers, the third being a serial killer. Mass killers have 4 or more victims in a single location at a single slot of time ranging from minutes to even days, but with no cooldown period. Men such as Richard Speck or James Huberty. And spree killers have 2 or more victims, but in 2 or more locations. Again, with no cooldown period, however. The man who killed Gianni Versace, Andrew Cunanan. In the early lives of mass and spree killers, they are often considered to be losers, loners, failures, and are, at least in their minds, generally ostracized from society and their peers. These people are often, due to a combination of aforementioned factors and factors which will be addressed, often hate themselves almost as much as they hate the rest of the world, which is one of the reasons these rampages often lead to suicide. Generally, they externalize blame for their situation and blame the world, people, society, etc. They are consistently regarded as extremely paranoid and extremely impulsive. Along with other forms of trauma, these criminals were often bullied as youth, which can lead to arguably the most critical aspects of both mass and spree killers, anger. I would feel justified in assuming that you have felt anger, even rage in the past, as have I. However, I would also feel justified in assuming that you haven't walked out into the streets with a loaded shotgun and that look in your eye. The difference between myself, you, and men such as Howard Unruh and the father of mass murderer, or Carol Fugate and Charles Starkweather, the father and mother of spree killing, can be traced to a number of things. We likely don't have a debilitating mental health condition and are much better equipped at handling stress and anger. However, at the same time, these people need help in ways that we do not. If we were to generalize the mental health issues and say that there isn't an issue, we sweep the problem under the carpet and pretend it isn't there. 272 people killed and 738 wounded for a grand total of 1,010 victims in just the top 10 deadliest mass shootings is a problem. The aforementioned McDonald's massacre was at the time the deadliest mass shooting in American history. It is now ranked 8th. That is a problem. From 1982 to 2011, a mass shooting occurred once every 200 days, and between 2011 and 2014, a shooting would occur at least once every 64 days. But in 2017, there was a shooting every day of the year. That is a problem. I try to avoid sounding like a broken record, but I need to drive this point home. We have a problem. As stated before, America is suffering a mental health crisis. However, this crisis is often widely misunderstood. It is said that 1 in 5 adults suffer from mental health issues. 1 in 5. But this number is often misunderstood, however, as that includes people with ADHD, being on the autism spectrum, basic mental health issues with sleeping, as well as schizophrenia, borderline personality disorder, psychopathy, etc. In all truth, the former issues are often given more attention than the latter. Thrive NYC, a mental health support organization in New York, has reported they spend 80% of their overall funding addressing other mental health issues as opposed to serious mental health issues. It has been stated that the receiving of mental health services is overall inversely related to need. Those suffering from anxiety or loneliness are often given the focus as opposed to those who genuinely need those services, leaving the deeply afflicted by the wayside of society. I would like to state, however, that I am not downplaying any mental health issues, but I am saying that those who are in much less dire need of care often receive it as opposed to those who absolutely need it. An unknown author once stated, "Of course I'm out of my mind. It's dark and scary in there." It's hard to work through deeply rooted mental health issues. Often people deeply afflicted leave it alone, push the obvious fact that they need help aside, and sink deeper and deeper into the inky black waters. Fighting those through mental health issues, big or small, is an uphill battle, but is exponentially more difficult without support. Returning to the main topic, mass killers. A study done by PSU took a sample of mass murderers and did a critical analysis on factors that led to their crimes. 50% of the sample group was shown to have had a previous psychiatric history, hospitalizations, etc. 30% had no previous history, and the remaining 20% had a, quote, questionable history. The common diagnoses were paranoid schizophrenia, delusional disorder, and major depressive disorder. As stated previous, these killings are a single event, one blanket act of great violence. Anyone with mental health afflictions can testify that some days are worse than others. If any of you are a fan of comics, you may have heard of Alan Moore's masterpiece, The Killing Joke. To grossly deny justice to the overall plot, in a nutshell, the overall idea is the Joker is trying to prove a point that he's not so different from the rest of the world, that it doesn't take much to turn a man into a raving nutcase. As said in one of the more popular monologues in recent pop culture, all it takes is one bad day to reduce the sanest man alive into a lunatic. That's how far the world is from where I am. Just one bad day. Looking at the subject at hand, we see credence in that idea. Often it may be an event or a flare of mental health illness, crisis points, that pushed mass killers over the edge. The idea is to try to prevent that from happening, to prevent the fall. According to the Los Angeles Times, these crises were in many cases communicated to others through a marked change in behavior, an expression of suicidal thoughts or plans, or a specific threat of violence. We could spend all day trying to rationalize what drives a man to set up on a tower and shoot 45 people, the Texas Tower shooting, Charles Whitman, and we wouldn't even scratch the surface of the issue. However, nonetheless, we must do our absolute best to try and prevent these tragedies from continuing by feasible means. We can beat around the bush and try to use this as a catalyst for gun control all we'd like, which in of itself is an entirely different case of worm cans that I don't want to open right now, nor can I. Spoiler alert, however, it does not work, nor is it realistic. Again, we can beat around the bush, but at the end of the day, we need to address these issues at the root. Not every killer is a twisted monster who revels in the joy that the death and suffering of others often brings them. That the death and suffering of others brings them. The Richard Ramirez's, the Ted Bundys, the Albert Fishes of the world. These are the people that break and turn into mass killers as a final act before the curtain. These men are often just like you and me, but they're hurt and broken and in need of help. This does not excuse what they've done, however. This does not bring hundreds, possibly even thousands, back from the grave. These are tragedies that can be avoided in the future if we were to take the steps to save these men from the path paved in blood and tears that they would choose otherwise. Now, this marks the end of my address. However, I would like to make a final request. In the place of any applause I may receive, I would ask the audience to take place in a small 10-second moment of silence to remember all the victims and their families of these disgusting tragedies, and remember that the senseless killings do not have to continue.